This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with the City of Eau Claire. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
We will call the meeting to order. Thank you for coming to the November 4th, 2019 meeting of the Eau Claire Plan Commission. I'm glad all of you have come. This meeting is being broadcast live, and in fact it has been for some time. This meeting is being broadcast live by Valley Media Works on Charter Channel 994, WRFP LP 101.9, and online at valleymediaworks.org. The Plan Commission attempts to conduct its public hearings in a relatively informal manner, with the constraint that we must deal with the issues before us in an orderly and business-like fashion. We give the applicant an opportunity to speak first, then others, either for or against a proposal, are each permitted to speak once during the public hearings. We do request that everyone restrict their comments to issues before us, avoid unnecessary repetition, and be prudent in the use of time. We want to be sure that we have adequate time to review and discuss all items with equal diligence. Please remember to turn your phones off or to silent. If you do plan to speak tonight, there are yellow slips of paper in the back. We ask that you fill out your information on that slip of paper and hand it to Mr. Petrie, who is sitting up in front here. Before you do speak, please introduce yourself with your name and your address. We have actually only one item for a public hearing. That's number one. Number two, the applicant has asked us to postpone, so we will not be considering item number 2 on the agenda tonight. The rest of the items are for public discussion, which means that we have the discussion here among the commission, but the public does not speak on those. So with that, we'll begin with item number 1, a public hearing for recommendation to the City Council to approve to rezone property from R1 to C3P and adopt the general development plan for office use at 2408 Vine Street. Mr. Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the Commission. Again, before you this evening is a request to rezone property located here, item number 1, just off North Claremont and Vine Street. To rezone from the current R1 designation to C3P, and the P then would be the portion adopting the general development plan for office use, and the address there is 2408 Vine Street. The applicant is Mr. Dan Schwegel, and the area around the property here includes the newly reopened restaurant to the north, Clearwaters. Again, US Highway 12 or North Claremont Avenue to the east, and then some residential to the west and south. It's an aerial photo showing the 2 properties essentially in question here, with the 1 residence located on the easternmost property. The comprehensive plan does show this area as a mix of commercial and low-density residential. Again, this is essentially a transition portion of property here from that commercial right along Claremont into the residential to the west and south. The request again includes the reuse of the existing building and modifications to the parking and the site itself. The applicant has submitted a tentative site plan here. Again, the rezoning includes the 2 parcels, which total approximately 0.64 acres in size. The planned development portion of this would allow the repurposing of the building from its single-family residential to the applicant's Edward Jones office. And it would include removing the existing garage and adding off-street parking. As you can see here, a little bit hard to see some of that, but the existing drive is on the east to the right there, and then potential proposed access to a parking area then would be moved over to the west. The total proposed office space would be approximately 1,200 square feet, which would include a reception area and a conference room. It's noted in the staff report that the final site plan compliant with city codes shall be submitted in conjunction with building permit application. And as a result, it may require planning commission approval of the site plan, again, pending the scope of that parking, building and site reconstruction. So again, the applicant is moving forward here requesting a rezoning with a general development plan. You may see this come forward depending on the scope of the site plan in the future. As noted again, the comprehensive plan does identify this area as being appropriate for the commercial development. The surrounding area is zoned C3. I can show that a little bit better here. You can see along Claremont, particularly to the north and east, and the R1 to the west and south. The building itself was built in 1962. The applicant intends to occupy the building prior to June of 2021 when his current Edward Jones office space lease ends. So with that, staff does find the request consistent with comprehensive plan, compatible with the surrounding area, and does recommend approval as requested. Stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Christopherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Allen, I'm just curious, in the contact with the surrounding neighbors, was there any comment, support of this use of property?
A very good question. I did not receive any phone calls, emails, other communication from any of the neighboring properties.
Any other questions from the commission? I see none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the applicant here?
Yes.
Please come forward.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening. Is there anything you want to add to the information?
I think he summed it up very well. I plan to use the site for my office location, do a complete remodel, bring it up to code, put adequate parking in, and to be an overall improvement to the neighborhood.
Good.
No.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? I see none. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any members of the public who came to speak on this item tonight? Okay, I don't see any. Is there a motion in the commission for this item? Commissioner Peterson
I'll make a motion to approve the rezoning.
and Commissioner Christopherson.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? I see none, so we'll call the question. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. All right, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Item number 2 will not be considered tonight because the applicant asked for it to be postponed. Item number 3 is public discussion for recommendation to City Council, approval of an annexation in the town of Seymour. Mr. Allen.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair and members of the commission. This item as shown here is agenda item number 3, on the far east side of city limits. More specifically, that's 2 parcels here highlighted in blue. The property owner is JA Development Group, LLC. They do have a representative here this evening. This is a petition to annex vacant land to the city of Eau Claire. The area in question is approximately 3.41 acres in size. Here's an aerial photo just showing it in context with the surrounding neighborhood. Again, there's vacant property to the south. Should note that, again, this is located northeast of Andover Avenue and north more directly of Seymour Road, the far bottom of the screen there. The property is very much located within the sewer service area of the city of Eau Claire. Water and sanitary sewer are available along Andover Road, which is to the west there, kind of south and west. So the request is consistent with comprehensive plan. No land use changes are proposed at this time as a result of the annexation. However, should note that the applicant has recently received rezoning approvals for property immediately adjacent to the south, 2 separate approvals. I think it might show up a little bit better here. Some of those larger properties immediately adjacent to the south. The applicant has indicated submitting applications for residential development in this area, and in fact has done so with the most recent application deadline. So you'll be seeing some additional approvals coming forward here in the next several meetings. So with that, here's the overall legal description laying out the properties. Dedham Street is to the southwest of the property. This shows a little bit better. You can see there due west, the label there. This is a Eau Claire County aerial photo to show some of the parcel boundaries outside of the city limits. So that's essentially curves at the north terminus of Andover Avenue. So again, as the applicant comes forward with additional approvals, obviously we see layout of the overall property, this piece being part of that. So with that, staff does recommend approval of annexation as submitted, and we'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? I see none.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Is the applicant here?
Hi there, I'm Andrew from J Development Group.
Okay.
I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the annexation.
Do you have anything to add to what's been said?
I don't. I think you did a pretty good, well representation of what we're looking to do.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and this was a public discussion, so I will entertain a motion on this item if there is one. I'll bet there is.
So
Commissioner-
moved.
Thank you. Is there
I'll second.
Commissioner Wolfgram. All right, any discussion? I see none, so I'll call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. And that passes. Thank you. Congratulations. Item number 4 is a public discussion for recommendation to the City Council to approve the final plat for 20 single-family residential lots at Rosewood Lane and Tucker Trail. Mr. Petrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Plan Commission and the public. Before you is a final plat located on the far west side of the city limits, shown on the map. This final plat is for 20 single-family lots. The applicant is Real Land Surveying. The property owners is Kent Home Builders. The parcel of land that will be subdivided is 6.1 acres, currently zoned R1. Here's a zoomed-in aerial, or zoom-in of the plat showing the lot sizes. All the lot sizes are consistent with the R1 standards. The R1 standards are 60-foot wide minimum and 8,000 square feet. All these lots proposed do meet that minimum requirement. This Tucker Trail Phase 1 used to be Sherman Estates. They have renamed the subdivision to accordingly. The developer's agreement for the street and utilities extension will be a separate item at the city council meeting. The final plat will also be an item on the council agenda for November 12th. Here's an aerial photograph showing the development and the phases that have been completed, starting on the east side and have worked slowly west towards I-94. The parcel is showing the entire parcel currently inside the city. This 20 lots would be on the north end of that. Rosewood Lane comes in from the west, and to the south is Tucker Trail. Again, this item will be heard in front of the in front of the council next Tuesday. With that, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? I see none. Thank you. Is the applicant here?
Nathan Flagstead, Real Land Surveying. Be happy to answer any of your questions. They explained it very well.
Okay.
Just a small addition. The graphic representation is a little bit large there. If we could, basically the panhandle kind of shape of Texas, if you just drop that kind of straight south and then straight to the east, that would more graphically encompass what we're, the plat, as this is the the plat shape.
Oh, okay.
So that will be dealt with at another time. So, any questions?
Commissioner Wolfgram.
Thank you, Chairman Larson. Thank you, Mr. Flakestead. This will not impact my vote at all, but I was just curious, in the spirit of knowing how a development fits into the mix of our housing costs in the city and county, have you determined any preliminary price points for your single-family homes?
Negative. I cannot speak intelligently on that. I was involved in the platting.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the commission? I see none. Thank you.
Thank you.
This was on the agenda for public discussion. Is there a motion on the commission? Commissioner Seymour.
Thank you. I move approval.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Commissioner Granlund. All right. Any discussion? We're moving quickly tonight. All right. So I will call the question. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. I see none, so congratulations. And number 5 is another item for public discussion for approval by the Plan Commission. A site plan for a 2-story mixed-use building, commercial on the first floor and residential on the second floor at 421 Water Street. Mr. Petrie.
Thank you again. Before you is item number 5, located on Water Street, central of the city. Before you is the final site plan for a mixed-use building. The ground floor would be commercial, the upper floor would be residential, located at 421 Water. The applicant is Investment Realty. To the north of this existing site is commercial mixed-use. To the east, to the south is the Chippewa River, and to the west is a mixture of commercial and residential. This is the proposed site plan in front of you. The parcel is approximately almost 4,000 square feet. The current zoning of the parcel is CBD-P. That plan development is for the Water Street Overlay District. Did some research on the parcel. The structure was built in 1841 as a single-story commercial space. It does have a taller, it's about 1.5 stories, but it is a true 1-story. Most recently, it was the Guppy's Pizza restaurant. Has closed a couple years ago. The building has been vacant since then. The health department and the building inspection department has condemned the property at this time. Showing the floor plans, you would note there is a basement for storage. The ground floor would be the commercial space with entry off the front and the rear. The second floor would be two apartments, 4 units each, or 4 bedrooms each, pardon me. Here's the proposed elevation of the property, showing the 2-story, 2 entry doors in the front, 1 for the commercial, 1 for the residential. And here is an aerial photograph showing the parcel. Parcel does have some parking available off of the alley on the back. Going back to the site plan. Again, the site plan shows a 2-story building, mixed use. The square footage of the building is about 2,800 square feet. The parking requirement for this project is 12 stalls. How they came up with that is they are allowed a 10% reduction for transit and 5% reduction for bike parking. The Plan Commission shall review this proposal. They have 5 available stalls currently on site. The Plan Commission may waive the requirements for the other stalls. The applicant did note in his narrative that he does have available parking potentially to the west of this site. I did an inspection twice, driven by. The parking lot was significantly full to the west and along the alley. The applicant can speak more to that and how they would regulate that. Bicycle parking shall be added to the site. Spoken with the applicant, he did note that they will add it along the sidewalk for the commercial and residential to be used. It should meet city standards. The dumpster shall be fully and-screened. It's currently not fully and-screened. Exterior lighting shall meet city standards as well. The grading and drainage is noted in a report, along with public utilities, traffic, and transit. There is a few conditions that need to be met before the site plan is approved. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions with this proposal.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission? Thank you, Mr. Petrie. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Commissioner Christopherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm kind of interested in the layout of the second floor for the residential portion. Is this, have we seen this particular kind of layout before along Water Street?
Excellent question. Since I've been here, potentially yes. The 200 block mixed-use building, Mogensen Aspen Hall, has a similar feel to it.
Okay.
They did put in, my understanding, most of those units are 4 bedrooms. And they have like a more of a smaller bedroom, smaller space feel to them.
Okay. In the application, did the project owner talk about this being intended for student housing, potentially?
Potentially. The applicant is here. That would be an excellent question for him.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the commission? Commissioner Peterson.
I know there's another, a great deal number of other buildings that are commercial on the first floor and residential on the second, and just looking at how the buildings fill up this block, a lot of them do not have on-site parking, so do they use that public parking lot too? So just because this is coming in now, they have to fulfill that parking?
That's correct. And that's why the Plan Commission does have the authority to waive those standards. Most of the parking along that alley is my understanding for the residential side of it. The commercial side is first come, first serve, or they use the city lots. I did note in the report too, from the Water Street District Plan that was done in, I think it was 2012, between the 200 and 500 block, the city on-street and off-street in those 2 lots, on the west there, and then there's a lot that's just north of the 400 block on Chippewa Street. We have available 339 stalls for the public to use for the commercial space. So this would be mostly used by the residential on the second floor.
Okay. One more question, if I may. With the yellow rectangle on the south side of the alley, or actually Riverside Avenue to the south, inside that yellow square, is that owned by the property owner?
That is correct.
Okay, and is that true with the other adjacent buildings that they own on the other side?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Commissioner Gregor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Petrie, I guess I wanted to see what else I could learn from you with regard to your research into the history of the building, because obviously it's a National Historic District, and 1841 seems to me unlikely that we had a brick building on Water Street at that time, but maybe there was another structure there at one point. But I guess is there anything significant from a historical standpoint? I know our Landmarks Commission did not review this because there was no requirement for them to, but
Correct.
I'm not sure if you found anything interesting in your research or anything architecturally significant at all.
My understanding is there was a fire during the 1800s along Water Street. Now, I don't know if this building actually survived. I would find it hard to believe. But the research that I found, this building was still there, which I don't know. Given the condition of the building, I find that still hard to believe. I mean, it's almost 150 some years old. That's pretty hard to believe. But on the National Register. The entire block is. It's not designated for the city to review the landmarks. It's not a local designation. It's the 400 block of Water Street is a National Register. So they will only review the demo permit, which would have to be held for 60 days. Other than that, the building significantly with historic significance, the facade would be, but if you have noticed, there is a gap in between this building and to the west, and there's actually some falling bricks or stones off the building, which makes it inhabitable. Other than that, it is an older structure along Water Street.
Okay, any more questions from the commission? I see none, thank you. Is the applicant here?
Hello.
Good evening.
Joe Miller with Investment Realty, owner of the building, developer.
Mr. Miller, can you address the parking situation you were
Sure.
explaining?
Absolutely. So with the building, if you see on the aerial map, we have 5 stalls to the south along the river there. We also own all of the adjacent parking along the river to the west there. We have a total of 18 parking spots going to the west towards Fifth Avenue. What we currently do is we let some of our student tenants who live a little bit further out park here and then walk to class. They can just take the walk path down to the class. So we're able to regulate this. All of our students, they have parking passes in their car, and we have identification for all their vehicles. So we're able to regulate who parks in these parking spots. So we'd be utilizing this. For commercial, we also have the adjacent building to the west, 427 Water Street, which is commercial. And we do have a parking lot behind that building, which is a private parking lot that can be utilized for commercial. And then, of course, the city lot to the west.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Christopherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Miller, thank you. From those comments, I'm thinking that your response is that, is this intended to be student housing on that second floor?
It will be, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And do you expect those 8 or however many are using those bedrooms, would that displace other student parking that you're filling for down the road there?
No, it will not. Like I said, we have these spots along the river that we currently let students that are kind of living in the outlying neighborhoods park here and to use. So we're able to carve out additional parking spots here for this building.
Okay, so you're not displacing parking?
No, we are not. And in fact, like I said, we keep track of all of our student parking. And on a yearly basis, we're usually in between 60 to 65% of students actually bring cars throughout the semester. A lot of our houses that are 2, 3, 4 bedrooms, 1 or 2 kids will bring cars for one semester, and then the other 2 roommates or another roommate will bring a car the next semester type of deal. So we're able to keep track of all of that for our parking.
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Miller.
You did have one question in regards to the layout of the property. And this has been a similar layout we've been using now as of recent. When we did the Aspenson Mogensen Hall and designed that, the 4 bedrooms were designed kind of this bedroom with an open concept type with spiral ductwork going through, and that'll be designed here. We also did 420 and 422 Water Street about 2 years ago above the old House of Rock. Very similar layout. So we've been utilizing this layout now for about the last 2 years, and it seems to have a real nice flow. We do 9-foot ceilings in there, so it's just a real nice open concept for the living room into the kitchen. Then we do a nice bar area for kids to sit at and things.
Thank you. Any other questions? I just have one. I take it you'll be planning to redo the front facade on the building too?
Yes, that is correct. If you look on the elevations page, here you go right here, the elevations page, 1 in the north elevation. So we're going to do, we brick facade, of course, on the front. The existing building now has kind of 2 columns built into it on both the left and right hand side. And you can see on our elevations, we're going to add the columns, replace with columns, kind of give that similar look to it. We're also going to do decorative corbelling all the way across the top on the parapet of the building. So it'll be quite nice when we're
And
done.
right now, the brick is painted, so you'll sandblast that off and,
Oh, no, it'll be all new construction.
oh,
Yep, so it'll be brand new brick. It will not be painted brick.
okay.
So we'll use a traditional color type brick, most likely some type of red or something like that to kind of fit in with the 400 block, that historical look.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Commissioner Seymour?
Thank you. I think I know the answer to this question, but that gap in between those buildings,
Yep.
that it's going to go away. It looks
That will
like.
go away.
Okay.
Yep, and that's, you know, to be quite honest, that's been kind of one of the challenges here is that we're gonna, you know, bring this building down and then rebuild a new building. We're gonna go up tight to each building on each side, so, you know, it does add a little bit of cost. Instead of being able to use forms, we have to use concrete block for the basement foundation because we're not able to get the forms in behind it, but, yes, they will be up tight to each side.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Any other questions from the commission? All
I
right,
have one quick one.
Yes.
The rear elevation seems to be incorrect compared to the plan. There's two doors shown coming out of the back. One attached to the, more or less a basement stair, as well as an exit from the store area. As we're looking at it now, we see one door that would essentially be the stair that goes up the back stair to the apartment units. And there's another door shown on the plan along the other side.
Yeah, that's correct. We did have to add an additional stairway to get down into the basement from the exterior. And kind of one thing that came in is we have to, because the neighboring buildings do not have sufficient basements, we do have to build a 4-foot frost wall over and go down. So how we're going to do the basement stair to go in, we had to move that to the exterior. So that's why I think just that rear elevation did not get updated.
Okay.
There will actually be 2 doors in the back of the building.
And then there'll be sufficient room between that and the fenced area to the neighbor?
Yes,
piece
yes.
In order to get some full exiting from all of those areas?
Yeah, it'll meet all requirements.
And then my recollection is that any building with 2 apartments in the upper floor needs to have an elevator.
No, that's not correct.
That's not correct, okay.
No.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you.
Yep.
All right, this is public discussion. Is there a motion? Commissioner Seymour,
Thank you. I move approval.
thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Commissioner Christopherson.
Thank you.
All right, any discussion? Commissioner Christopherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I simply want to verbalize this is a very insightful way of offering student housing, which of course on Water Street in that Randall Park neighborhood is home for a lot of students. However, with the situation that our community is finding itself in, looking for affordable housing, trying to stabilize the residences of Randall Park, I would find myself more eager to support this if it were 2 apartments that could be occupied by a student family or someone that was looking for a studio apartment or something that would meet some of the other needs that Eau Claire is trying to meet. So I am very pleased and grateful for the design of this building and how it fits in the historic nature of Water Street, the efforts that this investor is making on those fronts. But I would be much more, it would find it easier to support this if this was housing of a different type.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? I see none. So we'll call the question. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? One. Okay. That motion passes. Congratulations. Next, we are eager to hear the Regional Housing Task Force update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your eagerness with which to hear my 45-minute dissertation. That's not entirely true, but I should note that I've given similar presentations, and many of you have probably heard them, and they are literally 45 minutes. So I'll try to keep it much shorter than that tonight, and hopefully allow for some opportunity for some questions and discussion from there. Within your packet, there's just a brief cover memo outlining what's happened since the last opportunity we had to converse about this, which was back in March, which is hard to believe was 8 months ago. Along with that was a 2-page, kind of it's printed typically as back-to-back. We call it the one-pager, kind of a single handout with some summary data points, and then the 5 primary recommendations from the task force itself. So we've been utilizing that, we meaning the task force and those associated with that, since August when that was first put together. So back in March, just to kind of reset a little bit, provided a status report on what is called the Chippewa Valley Regional Housing Task Force. It was co-chaired by both Altoona and Eau Claire since June of last year already. Again, hard to believe how quickly that has gone. The task force is framed as we call a voluntary assembly of stakeholders, collaborating to better understand housing challenges, investigate solutions, and facilitate elevated cooperation. I think it was summarized best as saying it was an opportunity to create an environment for conversation. So that was really kind of the impetus for that, to start putting together some creative problem solving. The task force did conclude its initial work back in July. They put together a final report, a summary of recommendations, the 1-page handout, and 49 pages of collected data. I'm not going to go through each of those items here tonight, but they will be more widely disseminated. Actually, starting next Monday, City Council we will be presenting the materials, the outcomes from the task force in advance of City Council's strategic plan and the review and approval of that. So in conjunction with that, I'll be presenting much of the same to them next week. The task force also established 4 sector-based subgroups: building and development, finance, zoning and policy, and lived experience and service providers. Those groups have also been meeting since July, and actually throughout from time to time, slowly kind of regathering them here this fall. Each community that has participated in the task force is seeking to institutionalize their own individual community-specific task force or advisory committee. In Altoona, again since March, Altoona, their city council back in May formally adopted what they called the Altoona Housing Action Plan. They selected their plan commission to be keepers and implementers of the action plan. So that's not necessarily the intent as it stands now with Eau Claire, but we are working on finalizing our own city work plan, again, as I mentioned, to be integrated into the strategic plan with the city council, as well as an advisory committee of sorts. So working forward with those 2 kind of big next steps. So with that, just wanted to highlight some of the key findings from the task force itself. Just there's a lot of numbers here to kind of share some of just the heavy lifting that had happened with the group. They established consensus statements, helped define affordable. Again, it's kind of that 30% of household income. Define different housing segments to kind of determine where the data points needed to be in terms of moving forward with some policy direction. Defined income measures and synthesized the housing data, again 49 pages of that. Approved recommendations, totaled 45 different recommendations. And again, kind of just really condense this and hopefully not oversimplify the issues, but identified kind of these alliterative obstacles of income, inventory, and investment. So those are the things that really just stood out through the process with the task force, is that it's more than just, when you talk about regional housing and the struggles and obstacles related to it, income is a big part of that, as we've identified here in Eau Claire. Eau Claire County is has the second highest poverty level in the state. Inventory, obviously, really having a shortage of inventory that's not necessarily unique to Eau Claire, but it's something that's a critical piece of moving forward. And then the investment, how do we identify and leverage opportunities for investing in the housing situation. So again, those recommendations, as I mentioned, there are 5 of them, kind of categories, I should say. Now, there are 45 different recommendations broken up into 5 different categories. Development regulations, again, these are necessarily listed in priority order, but kind of in order of conversation we had with the task force. So with that, development regulations can be zoning regulations, a lot of things that the Plan Commission will have some input and purview over. City policies, again, more of a policy side of things. How does the City Council, perhaps even Plan Commission, address housing in its different strategies? Public funding, again, that talks about investment side of things. TIF and leveraging that is one, but other available public funding sources as well. Public-private partnerships, obviously that's going to be key moving forward. These groups, especially the sector groups, I should say, are key in implementing this part of the recommendations. And then finally, civic strategies. Again, what are some what can the civic partners participate in moving forward with affordable housing? So there are a number of those in the summary recommendations under each of these categories, but I just wanted to kind of give you the quick highlights of that. I think that's the end of the slides there. So again, I can go into a lot of different data, comments, and ideas there. But with each of that, I do want to talk about kind of the next steps, as I mentioned, going forward with the City Council and their strategic plan. These sector groups, again, are starting to meet once again. We have these work plans, so within the strategic plan, we'll be implementing many, if not all of those 45 different recommendations. And the next step with that will then be prioritizing a lot of those through City Council and work with them. So there'll be a number of things that will likely come back down to the Plan Commission, again, reviewing such things. One of those specifically is looking at parking regulations. What can that assist in lowering some of the costs associated with development and redevelopment if we look at lowering parking regulations? Again, that's just one that could happen in a zoning code format that would come back to the Plan Commission. Again, continuing forward with a number of the community collaborations many of you may have witnessed or been a part of, especially if your name is Commissioner Wolfgram, related to the Solace Circle project, which was previously called Devney House in Altoona, and then again came forward here back in end of September, early October. It was, again, a great success story, looking at taking an old kind of assisted living facility, more or less, and turning it into some immediate housing needs. So that's just one example of what we like to see actually happening in the ground, and here in Eau Claire as well, not just Altoona, but throughout the Chippewa Valley moving forward. So it's exciting to be a part of that. But again, you'll be getting more into the weeds, as it were, with these housing items, especially when we talk about development regulations, and we talk about city policies. So a number of those will be coming back to the Plan Commission in this next year. So with that, that's kind of where we are right now. Happy to answer any questions, but or even just facilitate a discussion moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the commission? All right. Thank you, Mr. Allen.
Thank you.
Does the commission have any code compliance items to talk about? Future agenda items? Any additions or corrections to the minutes? Thank you. This meeting is adjourned.
A transcript of this meeting is available for the hearing impaired. It will be available within 7 days of this telecast. Call 715-839-4912 or TDD 715-839-1689 or write Eau Claire City Clerk, P.O. Box 5148, Eau Claire, Wisconsin 54702-5148.